Hi everyone. So for today's video I wanted to talk about the climbing of uluru, or Ayers Rock for some people. Now, firstly I'd like to just talk about my personal experience with this. So I have climbed uluru. It was not, I wasn't told that that was its name, I was told the name Ayers Rock. And I climbed it, I had two attempts. The first one I failed, and I was 9 years old, it was 1984. And there was a thing up there called Chicken Rock, and you had to be able to get to Chicken Rock yourself to be allowed to climb. So that was sort of a way to stop people that were too fragile or too young or too disabled from climbing up it. And I failed. So 9-year-old me couldn't make it up there. And it seemed so bizarre to me. I said, "Dad, why don't you help me up there?" And he refused, because there was a sign there saying, "Do not help anyone up." And it was a safety issue. That was their safety precaution. Chicken Rock. If you couldn't make it to Chicken Rock, boom, you weren't allowed to climb it. And that's it just seemed silly to me. Like, to me, if it's going to be something to climb, and I've climbed massive 200-metre trees and other things, that they should have hand railings the whole way up. And it seems so strange that they didn't have this hand railing there. And people have given me different explanations of that at different times. They told me, "Oh, well, you know, they can't afford to put them all in there." No. If you're going to do that properly, you'll have hand railings the whole way up, and you'll make it safe. And maybe they did make it safe afterward. They've banned it now, but it really bothered me. And I saw, and they had a few different gravestones and such, and warnings, people that had died. I believe there was around 60 people that had died by that stage, and it might be more now. They died climbing it, and yet they don't bother to have the handrails for that part. And it just seems stupid to me. Now, I did manage to climb it. As I said, I had a second try a couple of years later. Strangely enough, I bought a t-shirt that said I'd climbed Ayers Rock when I hadn't climbed it. And I wore that t-shirt, and people would say, "Well, did you really climb it?" No, I just bought a t-shirt. Spent $10, bought a t-shirt, and I was being dishonest. So I felt like I had to climb it then, and I wanted to. I really, you know, when you've got something that says Chicken Rock and you don't make it, you just feel like, well, I've got to do it now. I mean, I didn't really want to do it until then. Well, I was interested, but anyway, so I climbed it. So the second time, and I made it all the way, by the way. I was really proud of myself for that. I was 11 years old, 1986, I think it was, and made it all the way up to the top. Now, I've got to say, it's not an easy climb. I've climbed a lot of things over the years. That is one of the hardest. It's one of the very hardest things to climb. You know, for an 11-year-old, I mean, I'm sure now, being a bit older, it would be a lot easier to climb it. But back then, for my age, and I was quite fit and healthy and good at climbing, it was really hard. It was scary, it was dangerous. I could have easily died a lot of times. And there weren't hand railings the whole way up. There were sections, 20 metres, 50 metres, where there was nothing to protect you. And so I was there going, what's going on? Do they want me to die? And there'd been people that died. And this really bothered me, and it still bothers me a little bit today. Why don't they have them all the way up? Maybe they do now, but, or they wouldn't now because it's banned, but it just seems strange to me that they would have these gaps, almost as if they wanted people to fall through the gaps. I mean, I was 11 years old, I was a bit scared, but maybe, say if you were 16, you were 18, you were 20, you'd probably want to fall through those gaps. You'd want to explore a bit. How strange it was that there were these massive gaps. I'm not talking about a little, whoops, one thing fell off. No, I'm talking about deliberate gaps of 100 metres at a time, 50 metres. I mean, I didn't measure it, but they were quite big gaps, and they were scary. And when I got up to the top, now going up it wasn't that difficult actually. After you got to Chicken Rock, it wasn't that hard. But when I got to the very top, it became really difficult, because then when you're at the top, the hand railings became few and far between. And what I noticed when I was up there, and people said, you feel this surreal, amazing feeling, and I did. It felt like I was walking on the clouds. It felt like it was this mystical thing. I was like, oh, I want to try to enjoy this, I want to try to enjoy this. And I felt this wind trying to push me off and kill me. Now, you know, it was very strange because there was no wind going up. And it wasn't a windy day, but it just felt like something was trying to push me to my death. And it was very scary. And as I walked along, and there was a guest book there. It was a big book, and you'd sign it, which was a lot more genuine than the t-shirt that said I'd climbed it. And I wish that they sold the t-shirts there, because then it'd be legitimate. But they didn't. And I got to this guest book, and there was a guy that I'm pretty sure he told me that he would climb up it just at the start of the day and then man the guest book, because the wind got so strange that it would push the guest book away. Everything had to be nailed down. And the wind was not a normal wind. It didn't just go this way or that way or this way. It wasn't even swirly. I've seen swirly winds. This was an erratic wind that almost seemed to be aimed at particular people. And other people that were up there didn't describe any wind at all. And they were there at the same time as me. It attacked me as an 11-year-old boy. And I found this very strange, because it was a wind that was directed at trying to push me off, trying to make me fall. And I fell a couple of times when I was at the top. And I didn't slip too much, so I was quite a good climber, but it would have been fairly easy if I had not been so scared, not been so careful, fairly easy for me to have died. And this was one thing that really struck me about it, was the lack of handrails and this strange wind. Yes, there was a surreal feeling, that was wonderful, but it wasn't an evil feeling, but also wasn't a good feeling. It was sort of like telling me I shouldn't be there. So I asked people later, and I asked them about this wind, and I was told that so the top of Uluru, or Ayers Rock, is not a sacred site. So it doesn't offend anybody for you to climb up there. The sacred sites are all at the bottom. There's places that are for men only, for women only, and for initiated people only, for adults only, and only for people in a particular tribe or language group or whatever it might be. And yeah, so the problem was that there was no problem with being at the top, only being at the bottom. But people told me, the Aboriginal people, they said that there's trickster spirits that would want to upset their people. So the problem with climbing is not the climbing. That doesn't upset anyone. The problem is the falling. So we had perhaps 60 people, who knows how many people died. And if they died and they fell on a sacred site, it would be a great insult. And that was the issue. That was what people became a little bit upset with. They said, well, as long as you die in and land in the right place, that's fine. So they had all these barriers put up, and they weren't to protect people climbing, they were to protect the sacred sites. And they had consultation with Aboriginals, and they're like, well, this bit's okay, but this bit's not. So put up handrails there. Not to stop everybody from falling, but just to stop people falling in the wrong spot. But the strange thing was that when people fell, they tended to fall on those sacred sites. Every time they'd be like, and they'd fall in the strange little pattern. Now, of course, you're dying. You're not like going to go, oh, well, whoops, I didn't mean to die on your sacred site. They don't want to do it. But it was an interesting thing, and they said, oh, that was the trickster spirit. So the trickster spirit wanted to upset the sacred site. So it's kind of like a demon, if you like, and wanting to upset an angel, sort of, if you want to think about it that way. So the spirit that was swirling the wind was like a demon. It wasn't a terrible demon, but it was one that was trying to kill me and make me land on a sacred site. And that was how it was described to me. Now, obviously, this is a bit of a belief system thing, and I didn't even get that information all that often, but that was the basic gist of it. So when they talk about closing it down, they're talking about protecting those sacred sites, which are all at the bottom, and also the fact that it's really dangerous. And look, if you're a fit and healthy person, you're probably not going to be pushed away. and if you're an adult. But a lot of people went up there that probably shouldn't have. People that weren't fit enough, weren't strong enough, were too frail, too young, too old, had a health condition, and even some people that were fit enough that just were disrespectful with how they did it. And that's the issue. And it wasn't for most of the people that climbed it, I'm sure were very, very respectful and weren't at any risk of falling or dying or going off the path. But so that's the issue as I understand it. I've asked and I said, well, do I have to apologise for climbing up it? I didn't realise. And nobody has ever told me that I've done anything wrong by climbing up it. And not because people didn't know then, but it's just simply not a problem. It's not a problem today if I climbed it. I mean, it would be a problem. I'll get a $6,000 fine. But that's what I've been told. And I've asked a lot of people. I haven't had anybody say to me, well, it's a sacred site at the top. It's not a sacred site at the top. Because it couldn't be, because Aboriginals never climbed it. A few did, and they weren't banned from climbing it. They're just told it's stupid. And it is stupid. Bloody hell, if they didn't have any handrails up there, very few people would be able to climb it without dying. And I mean, maybe they could do it with some other, climbing equipment. But certainly if you just went up there with your hands and feet, you'd almost certainly die, no matter how strong or how fit you were. It's just too hard to climb. And with the amount of wind and the erratic nature of it, certainly when I felt it, and it wasn't a windy day, it's the kind of thing that it seemed like it was aimed to kill you. And, perhaps it only attacked me because I was small. I was a little boy. And perhaps it wouldn't have attacked people that were stronger. So my view on the ban, in some ways I think that it shouldn't have been banned, that we should have put more restrictions in, but I guess they tried that. And for whatever reason, they just couldn't put all the handrails in there to make it safe enough, and people kept dying, or maybe nobody did die, and they're just worried. It was a little bit of a political stunt started by Peter Garrett about 10 years ago, and I mean, I haven't honestly seen very many Aboriginals complain about it. People seem to be complaining on their behalf. So that's my view on it. And look, it's not my culture, so if they want to ban it, they ban it. And I'm not going to protest against somebody's culture if that's really what they believe. I'm not sure that they really do believe it, but so that's my story about that. Okay, bye bye.